All righty. Good evening. Good evening. Welcome to Demo 2 for the Project 2 Electronic Illustration Black and White and Line Art Project. It's coming along. So in the previous video, went through, did talked a lot about how to be able to find good reference images, how to start building out your concept, doing the proper sketches and the setup for the painting, and now I am making my way through the artwork. We even did some character design in the previous video as well and talked quite a lot about that. So this class, what I want to go over with you guys today is how to build, you can use pattern within these pieces. On the D2L, I've got previous working files, PSD files that I've uploaded, and I recommend you guys download those and take a look at them to get an idea about how these things are reversed engineered and how I'm putting all these little print dots in layers together within this piece. And, it's coming along. I'm working through the background on this and moving my way forward. I want to remind you guys that clean line art is important for this project. So getting good lines in there. Watch out for those hairy lines. We don't want to see those show up. We want nice refined line work with good line weight. So within this painting, I've gone through and I've got my sketch from the previous. Here, I'll turn it on so you guys can see it. That's a little hard to see. There we go. Got the sketch from the previous week of my pirate ship and my background, not pirate ship, medieval ship. and I'm going through and starting to block things in. So it might be easier for me to be able to show you the layer setup now that I've got things at this level. So over here on the right-hand side, when we're painting in Photoshop, I always try and do something called non-destructive editing, right? So this means I'm working on lots of different layers and trying to get myself organized within the layers. I don't think people talk enough about this. I've seen some beginning students within Photoshop get in there and they try and put everything on the same layer. You really want to be working in different regions and different fields. So I've got all my reference images imported in over on the right-hand side of my canvas. And then as I'm starting to build up my layers, I've got one big layer up here for the sky, right, that I've cut out and painted within. And I've also made in the back here a sort of a global layer for the print dots. Let me bring that up to the top. Yeah, now we can see it, but I'll bring it all the way up to the top so you guys can get an idea of what I'm doing with this. All righty. Oops. One more try. Gosh. Here we go. All righty. So what this does is I've got a dot pattern that I downloaded off the internet, and I've got it canvassed. I've just copied and pasted it and merged it down into one giant layer. So now I can start to do some interesting stuff. For example, with this one big layer on here, I am going to grab my ship layer. It's bright green. I've double clicked on it to add a color overlay. Without that, it's this bright green color, this green layer. And I'm going to hold down the control key on my keyboard or command and click on the icon. Now I've got my ship selected. With my big white dots layer, I can go in and I can hit hold down control, shift, or control C, and then control shift V. So first you hit control C to copy, and then you hit control shift plus V to be able to paste in place within Photoshop. Now, what did I just do that quickly? I've added texture to my ship. I'm going to drag that layer all the way back down, put it back where I found it. So I'm keeping this big layer down at the bottom so that I can start to sort of take those previously drawn regions, select them, and then cut out these dots so that they all stay the same size on my piece. They don't have to stay the same size within your painting, but this makes it a lot easier to be able to get my texture in there and start overlaying it in very, very quickly. So now I'll drop this behind here. And now we can see we've got our ship dots. Now, if I wanted to, I can double click this. They're white with no background right now. I'm going to add a color overlay to those dots. And now all of a sudden, I've got another half tone that I've just created without going black with any opacity change. And that's the way that I got this sky to start getting built in up at the top of my background. Yeah. So I'm going to continue working my way through the ship, through the different regions like this. I thought tonight it would be good to, talk about some environmental stuff, maybe knock out sort of an easy rendering just for some background elements and talk to you about sort of secondary and tertiary details within those and walk you through sort of the thought process for how I'm going to go through and render some of this foreground. I've got the water to still do. That's going to be a lot of fun to work on later on. But for right now, I just want to handle these boards and these planks. So with the boards and the planks in the foreground, I'll got it separated out onto its own layer already. Change the color so you can see it easily. There we go. I'm going to be painting this section tonight. Again, it's on its own layer, and this makes it a lot easier for me to be able to do this region select tool or trick and start painting in different places. Yeah. And so from here, I'm going to go through and I'm going to create a new layer on top of these boards and planks by the edge of the water here. And I've got a new layer created just on top of that previous layer. And at first, I'm going to go in and I'm going to start painting with that middle gray color. So I'm going to work my way into the highlights or painting the light on this object today. Since we know that black is as deep as we're going to go with these. You can't go any darker than that. This puts me in a great position to start thinking about the way that the light works through my composition. So I've got some, with my sketching layer, I've got the indication of some wood grain, but when I go to paint this, I really want to think about which way the lighting is coming from. In the previous video, we established that the light on this character's face right here is coming from the top left-hand side, right over here. And getting that lighting, a good sense of lighting matching within the rest of your scene is really going to help to carry the believability of these illustrations that you guys are rendering throughout this course. And you can see within the background, I'm using that same top left lighting approach so that everything is consistent. And I'm going to be rendering the ship with the light coming from the top left-hand side into consideration as well. But for these posts, this is an easy one to be able to knock out this evening. And I think it'll give us a good platform to be able to talk about sort of secondary details. So now that I'm working with this layer selected, it's easy enough for me to go in and start making some decisions, right? Start making some painting choices. And I'm thinking, I can't remember where I saw these, but there was some of them that had a sort of a fuzzy top to them, like the wood was a little bit more splintered or broken up at the top of these poles. And remember, I still have white and I still have that sort of middle gray or the gray with the dots over the top of it thing that I can do. I can also do gray dots on top of black, which will give me an even greater sort of middle tone without having to change the opacity. Right. So I'm just going to go ahead and make some big decisions here and start establishing sort of what the edge of this post or pillar looks like. And you can see that within my sketch, I've got some other lines that I've created. I want to go ahead and include those in there as well, just to be able to give them a little bit of interest and a little bit of meaning. But the vast majority of these poles, I want the lighting to be on the left-hand side, and then I can also do some rim lighting over here on this side, just a little bit. And when I'm making these lines, right, this is the line art project. Now we're finally talking about lines. I'm trying to think of interesting sort of shape language. So what makes for good and bad shape language when you are doing line art? So each time I'm trying to think of a balance and a rhythm between the different elements that I'm marking down. So even in this one little pillar, I'm thinking about, is this compositionally rhythmic? Does it have a good motion and flow to it with the separation of the lines? If we start to put things really close to one another like this, people are going to think that it's some kind of piece of geometry or something or some kind of patterning. So I'm just trying to separate them out so that if I was to print this out on a big canvas and make it into its own painting, just this little tiny section, this little tiny wood pillar that I'm creating, would it hold up? Does it have as an abstract expressionist piece? So from here, I've got my wood planks, which I can start to do some really, really interesting stuff with, and I'm working sort of subtractively here. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a choice and add my lines to the wood planks. And this is going to be the right. So you can see I'm starting to get some strokes like that fade away. That's really not what we want within this project. We want solid color throughout all of our line work. No halftone or opacity shifts. Transparent brushes, fuzzy brushes, that kind of stuff. Not for this project, my friend. So when it came to looking at everybody's sketches and progress that y'all have uploaded, I noticed that a lot of you guys really need to continue thinking through these illustrations as being one panel stories, right? So these are within one image, you're telling a story. And the more stuff that we can add to this within the world, within the background to help give us some kind of indication of where our characters and the moment is happening, the better this is going to look. So what I'm going to end up doing here is working my way through all of these docs. I really don't want to sit there and show you guys all that because I think it's going to become repetitive. But what I'm starting to do is create a good wood patterns, and it almost is like a linoleum board that they use the metal tools to be able to carve out of, is the shape language that I'm creating. That was me working really uptight on this piece, but I think it's probably a good idea as well to back up the canvas, or sorry, my zoom, and try and work really far away at first without getting too zoomed in. When you do that, I could end up spending, 15, 20 minutes on each one of those little boards when really I want to always keep kind of a global look of how is this helping the overall composition. And then I can go back and I can tighten this up, but working really broad first and really loose and then into the details is really going to help your pieces a lot. How many times have you, when you're in high school, where you're sitting there with your nose a couple centimeters away from the page, trying to draw a character's eye with like the most detail in the entire world? And for these digital paintings, we can get super detailed on them, but that's in a process of refinement and going back and working on these paintings in second and third passes, not just all at once. If you get in too close with the detail right at the very beginning, what you tend to do is you get burnt out. Your hand gets tired. You start working sloppily and lazily as you continue to move forward through your piece. And let's just unclick from what it is that I'm creating. And yeah, that's a pretty good, interesting little board pattern that's working here. I think I can justify this. I might drop it back some more, or erase some of it out if I think it's too much. But yeah, this has got sort of good rendering, a good rhythm happening to it that also works with the diagonals that I'm creating within the rest of the piece. So we've got these strong diagonals coming down from the boat, from the boat's mast, the ropes, and then the boat itself is on an angle. So I think that these are all kind of working with it pretty well. I'm going to try and get a little slick here, and let's see if we can't. Control C, Control V, Control Shift V to be able to paste in place. I'm going to hit V on my keyboard to be able to move around to get over into my Move Selector tool. And almost there. Trying to not have to do as many of these lines as aha. There we go. Keep it on the same plane. And I think that needs to get moved back a little bit. I'll take it. All right, save myself some time with the line work, and that is totally okay. You guys, if you've got repeating elements within Photoshop, I think the trick here is to think about how we can work smarter with what it is that we're creating, whenever possible, whenever you can. That's not to say that using so for example, the textured brushes, or if you download a brush pack that's got I don't know, something in there like a tree stamp to be able to make the trees within your scene. Well, if you that's the only thing you have within your painting is the tree stamp or the grass brushes, the foliage brush, and that's the only thing that you're using. Well, people are going to be able to tell that you use those foliage brushes pretty quick and pretty early on. So I think a lot of special brushes and talking about automation, Photoshop and whatnot is okay, but you still have to have a good vision, and sometimes you can't. You always need to be willing to put in the work to be able to make the painting be exactly what it needs to be. I guess I'm sort of thinking, all right, is this worth it? Yeah, I could go through and detail, every little bit of this wood here, but the overall painting and the composition, because I'm working fairly far back, doesn't entirely need it. This can be kind of cool to add some barnacles, or the impression of barnacles, just some sort of dot, sort of roughness on there to break up those vertical lines that I've been establishing. There we go. And we're just kind of having a conversation, discovering this along the way, right? So you're going to have your sketch done. Hopefully you've put in a lot of thought into that sketch and done the heavy lifting at that stage, so that when you get to the painting, you're still making choices, right? Like, I didn't know that I was going to do this kind of patterning work here. I'm sort of discovering this as I'm going through and painting it and having a conversation with the illustration. So what's that balance between how much you got planned out and then how much talking you get to learn with the painting along the way? I remember when I was at a governor's honors when I was in high school, that we were doing these giant abstract expressionist paintings, and they didn't give us any direction. They didn't give us anything, any feedback at the beginning of it for how to approach this. And I remember the professor that summer, he was coming around to everyone, and he was saying, well, if you're stuck, what you need to do is just start painting. You are going to make 1,000 little decisions along the way, and it will turn into what it needs to be. So allow yourself that time to be able to think about these paintings. Fail fast in the beginning, get as much decided as you can early on, but don't sweat it if sometimes you just got to get in there and start discovering the painting. The next thing is, people always talk about having writer's block or creative block, or maybe you're feeling a little bit anxious or apprehensive about a project because you don't really have a lot of that good of an idea for how you want to approach it. So you just sit there, start procrastinating. As creatives, I think procrastination's the name of the game. But to overcome that, I've found in my own career, to get over procrastination, it really helps to go out and start doing more research. So if there is a time where I just can't get myself started on this painting or this animation, and I'm not feeling too excited about it, yeah, your brain needs time to be able to process it in the background. I get that, but there's nothing like going out there and watching some other animation, some other motion graphics, looking at some other illustrations, be able to get you excited. I think most of the time, procrastination and writer's block or creative block is you don't have enough of the vision loaded into your mind yet at that point. It's not clear enough for you to really be able to decide how you're going to move forward. So when that happens, start painting. Start painting. Go look at some more research pictures, and that should help you sort of start to break those creative blocks a little bit. I think I read a bunch of bunch of comments from you guys, and everyone was saying, "Oh, I don't really know how I'm going to do the light and dark, and I don't know how I'm going to incorporate pattern into this piece." Well, I hope that this is giving you some clues. So we're kind of got those decks rendered in there. There it goes. It's starting to show up and make a lot more sense visually. It's still not as strong as I would like for it to be. So this is giving me some ideas, right? Let's make some choices now. And this is part of that discovery process. So I know I've got two options here. It's not standing out as well as I would like for it to be. I'm going to go in and I'm going to try and add a second pass of color. So I'm going to start adding some white, a white outline on the outsides of these things to see what that does for us in improving the overall look and feel of these and to get them separated out a little bit more from our background. So now I've got my white paint, and I'm going to go in here and start really pushing where those highlights are going to be on this piece. I told you I want the wood up at the top. Okay, but this is not super shiny metal. This is simply wood, weathered wooden posts that are in this, that are by the water. So you notice I'm covering up some of the stuff that I painted previously. That's okay, man. Digital painting is not always a one and done. We build things up on top of the different layers. There we go. Nice pull on that line. And let's check it out. So again, I'm applying this white on a new layer. Those are starting to stand out quite a bit more. Let's see, without the white, with the white, how much they're popping now. And I've got some other tricks up my sleeve to be able to make this dock really come to life and make it feel more done and finished. But for now, let's go in this white line around the edge here. Let it start dropping back as we get a little further away. So it's not quite as filled in as it is on the first two. All right, so now this is rim lighting. Outlines like this are your best friend on this project, right? So this kind of, yeah, we've got our established line work from the sketch in the beginning, but we're going to be creating more lines. White with gray, highlighting rim lights along the way. Let's go ahead and just to keep everything kosher, that on this side, just a little bit, but not quite as strong. All right, so those posts, they're starting to stand out within my foreground quite a bit more. I haven't added any white to the poles on the ground. I think I can do that next, but let's have our layer selected when I go in and do this. All right, so an easy win here is hit B on the keyboard to get back to my brush, is to sort of go in from what I had previously. So I'm gonna do a couple different things here and get a little fancy with this line work. It's a good spot to add a lot of highlight. You can see how the white on top of the gray starts to work pretty well. And this is just going to really brighten this part up. Yeah, and I'm thinking about each one of these lines I'm creating and doing a second glance to make sure that the line strength and quality is working well, that it feels like a good line when I create it. And working right along. This, I think I'm going to start playing some background music on these videos. So what I'm trying to do is create a shadow coming off of the pillars instead of just painting black behind the pillars, which would be, the easy way to do it. Instead of building up my light, you can see how this is starting to feel really textural, really, really nice. Got it? There we go. It's got some good movement to it. There's a good rhythm for all these lines that we're building up here. Well, that's a little squiggly line. Try and not do too many of those. Like this one, the way that's terminating. Right. Line art. Now let's off click from there, and we can see what a difference this makes as we start to back up too. Those are really starting to pop and show up nicely with that extra bit of white on there. Makes all the difference in the world. Okay. Now let's have some fun and play with it a little bit. We've got that layer, okay, my base black layer. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to grab that big white section. I just hit Control C, turn it back off. And we're going to go within my layers. Aha. And now I'm going to Control Paste. All right. So what has that just done? We've got now white dots on